And it's interesting. I had a client that I launched last April. His name's Matt O'Neill. He runs the Good Mood Show. And dude, he is, and yeah, I just gave him a plug. Sorry. Sorry, but if you want to see how to do a podcast, check his shit out because he does everything right. He had a strategy. He has goals in mind. He leverages everything in an opportunity to grow the show. He invests time. He invests energy. He invests, here's the big one, money. He literally runs his podcast as a business because it is. If you've got goals for the show, if you've got goals for the podcast, you have to structure it like you structure your business. You want it to grow, you got to invest. And there's only 3 ways to grow a show. It's time, it's luck, it's money, or it's a combination of all 3. So that's where we're coming from. And that's why we see those numbers drop so dramatically, especially as we come out of this COVID creator environment that we've been in for the last couple of years.
I think that video piece is really key. I hang out in a bunch of different podcast groups on Facebook, and people, it's still at least a once or twice a week question from new podcasters, should I do video? And it's amazing to me how many people actually answer the question with the answer no. I'm like, YouTube's the largest podcast distributor right now. and I'll drop that little knowledge in there and people are like, what? But they're all video. I'm like, well, yeah, but everyone has their podcast on YouTube and more people are going there and listening to it than Spotify. So,
well, and you know, YouTube has recognized this as well. They have youtube.com/podcasts. So they have a dedicated YouTube URL specifically for podcasts. And they're starting to cater more heavily towards podcasts. They announced this last year. It was right before Podcast Movement. There was an industry summit that was a day before PM that I managed to sneak my way into. And YouTube was in there speaking on it. And they're dedicating a ton of resources to podcasting because they see the potential there. Now, if the largest video channel or website in the world is looking at podcasts and knowing that there's something that adds benefit there, if they're investing in it, we should be investing in it too.
Well, and one thing I like about that, and I'll come right back to you, Kevin, is to be successful in a podcast is actually easier than being successful in a traditional YouTube channel. The reason I say that is you've super got to produce a YouTube video show and really produce the shit out of it. You can kind of get away with stuff when it's only audio and you're only pushing out audio, right? So you can get away with some shit. But if you're going to put video on there, you have to produce a fucking show, right? It has to be something. Go ahead, Kevin.
I think the other big advantage YouTube has for new podcast talent is that people still go on YouTube and just surf. You know, you used to go on the internet, you'd surf, and wherever your search engine took you, and whatever thing, rabbit hole you went down is where you'd be, and you'd spend time that way. People still do that on YouTube. They still go on, they search for stuff, and then they look at the videos, the recommended videos on the right, and they start, looking at new stuff. And I found really cool content that way. People, I don't think, do that really on podcast apps. You don't really necessarily go in and search.
Do they? Because I know I don't. I don't sit there and just go thumb through, podcast players and go, oh, that looks like a cool cover art, I'm going to play that one.
Now, I'll put in a keyword and do that a little bit, but I'm looking at, the thumbnails. I'm looking at the potential titles and content. I'll do that, but I'm not just randomly flipping through, hoping something sounds cool. Ooh, I'll listen to that today. Mine's at least more purpose-driven.
Yeah, the only time I ever do that on a podcast app is when I'm looking for the Force podcast review for Donnie for our Monday morning show.
So every Monday inside of SCN Online, we do this thing called Badass Live, where Kevin and I run like a morning talk show for all the members of Success Champions Networking. And so there's a whole bunch of mini segments. One of the segments is Force podcast reviews. Kevin goes and finds some sort of operational, boring ass statistics, process stuff, right? I go find him some woo-woo mindset, kumbaya, something or other, and we force each other to go listen to these podcasts and then come back and talk about them and review them. It's actually a pretty funny segment, but a horrible podcast sometimes that we feed each other.
I don't know if I can commit to that schedule. Because it's interesting. I don't even listen to podcasts. I don't listen. I watch. Every podcast that I consume, I always consume it with video. Occasionally I'll go over to Spotify, but only a reason I go over there is for a little JRE from time to time. But even if I'm watching Joe Rogan, I'm still watching Joe Rogan. I don't just listen to it. When I'm sitting at my desk, I consume video podcasts, and typically the way I like to do it is I'll be producing or doing something, whatever it may be, and I'll have the podcast playing on a different tab. And then if they get excited or they start laughing, because I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts, I'll tab over to see what the hell's going on, because I want a visual representation of what I'm hearing. I want to feel like I'm part of what's going on. And that's why, for me personally, audio podcasts, they just really don't work for me.